Hey everybody,
Hi, everybody.
welcome to NeuVector Office Hours. This, in fact, is the first time we've done Office Hours at NeuVector that I'm aware of, and even if
We're not
that's not
nervous.
true, I've declared it to be true, so it must be true. It's it's my plan. That picture that's on the screen of Grogu, he has a name now, was something I found on the interwebs. I thought it was cute. It's my meeting. I get to put cute pictures in it. That's just how it goes. So, in case you can't tell, we're doing an office hours. And what I mean by can't tell is here's how office hours typically work. I mean, if you've been on an office hours before, you generally know the format. It's geeks hanging out with geeks. It's casual. We're not really here to market or sell or do a lot of deep dive training. The star of the show, well, it's you, the audience members. So after I open up with a little bit of housekeeping, we'll try to take the microphones off of mute. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you're shy about using your microphone or you broke your microphone this morning because you were angry at somebody, um, that's okay. We'll take this stuff and put it inside of the chat with the Q&A. My name is Jorn. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at NeuVector. I've been in the industry for, I don't know, 26, 27 some years at all sorts of organizations. Happy to be here. And my good friend and coworker, Tracy Walker, has come along for the ride. He's both taller and smarter and has some really interesting content to drop down today. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to do a sort of in case you missed it, just an overview of things that have gone by in the latest iterations of NeuVector, but I don't want to take up a lot of time. And as you can see from our agenda, we'll open up the mic for a little bit of discussion. If it's quiet or we don't get distracted, Tracy's actually got a really good talk, some brain explodey things about how to really operationalize NeuVector inside of your environment and really how to operationalize security in general. So some day two best practices about keeping your environment secure and trying to keep everybody from going crazy. And we'll close with some closing events. And again, keep the microphone open. If you missed it, I know we've got a mix of both current users of NeuVector and some new folks. Hi, new folks. NeuVector 4.0 dropped earlier this fall. A pretty big update. We put some new compliance templates, as you can see in. We're able to do secrets auditing inside of the platform. Role-based auditing controls are a lot more granular inside of NeuVector. So if you're doing federation with LDAP or AD, we're really able to get those controls deeply inside of the platform without you having to sort of copy and paste people over. Serverless support. So we're able to apply some security protocols, being able to do some scanning inside of serverless platforms. And we also broke the scanner out into standalone pods. That one's important if you're currently using NeuVector 3.whack. Upgrading from NeuVector 3 to NeuVector 4 is not only highly recommended, it's really easy to do if you do it right. because those scanner pods and containers are their own bits now, obviously you'll want to deploy them or they won't work. If you just go in and upgrade your elements to latest, you'll be missing that part. Very easy to do. The instructions are certainly on our instructions on our website. And if you want anybody to walk that walk with you, as a current customer, do not be shy about opening a ticket with support. In fact, I'm going to pop on over to the interface and log in. I just want to show you some of the interface updates logging in right now. It's so nice when you do a live demo and everything just logs right in.
Now, Jordan, you're still showing the NeuVector Office Hours PowerPoint. I don't know if you were aware.
That is peculiar. It should be showing my interface. That's what happens when you just start anew.
This is our first one.
Yeah. Why would it not do that? Is this better?
No, it is. It's still showing just that first slide.
Doing that to me. I know what I want. You know what? We're just going to explicitly share my browser. Better?
No, unless I've got a. It's still showing the first
Well,
slide.
I swear this is not pilot error on my part because it should be.
Now it is showing the thing.
Demo now.
That's peculiar. All right. Well, maybe open a ticket with Zoom. That was really, really slow. Anyway, the interface.
Their support.
Yes. Now I need to. Let me make this bigger because I've got myself all zoomed in all sorts of ways. Let's see. Let me quit that. Did that help? Did it change?
I see your mouse moving around. I can see 403.
Good. We got the console. So what I want to just point out were some of the things, serverless is here. We're able to go point at Lambda. I've got a Lambda project inside of here. If you're doing serverless Lambda on AWS, that's in NeuVector now. So we're doing vulnerability scanning there, growing that configuration. So you can tell your superiors that's built in. And the other thing I really wanted to show people that popped up in NeuVector 4.0 were some of, not only the standard vulnerabilities that you always get inside of NeuVector, but the compliance and the compliance templates that are inside. So this compliance profile is great. If you have some acronyms looming over your shoulder and you need to, if you got PCI DSS, you check that box right there to make sure that you're all in compliance. You can customize all these assets and you can export these reports for your auditors, for your management, for yourself, so you can sleep better at night. But like I said, we're not here to market. I thought I'd go over all of that. Have I gone back to my PowerPoint?
No.
All right. Let's resume the share and share this window. Do we see mountains?
Yes.
All right. I wanted mountains. Better.
Much better.
All right, so that's stuff that came in NeuVector 4.0. NeuVector 4.01, 4.02, and 4.03 have come in the intervening months and weeks since this fall. So I can't resist saying bug fix and performance improvements because that's what everything says on my iPhone. I don't know what they did, but we've sped things up. We've done some memory optimizations inside of NeuVector. We've added distroless image scanning by popular request. So if you were waiting for a feature to be able to go and scan images that were not necessarily in a repo, that's very valuable to you. And we've done a lot of updates on the Helm charts. Again, I'm not here to read the release notes. They are in our documentation every time we release a brand new version. I want to, before we hop on to Tracy's talk, I want to see if there are any questions. You can raise your hand, and if I can find the button to take everybody off of mute, I will take everybody off of mute. Is there a way to do that?
Jordan, right now, everyone has talking permitted, so everyone is welcome to speak up. Yay.
All right. Questions, comments?
And this can be any topic, really.
Yeah.
It can be something about NeuVector. It can be a technical question. Can NeuVector do this? Or we're having problems doing that. We were going to offer drones for every question that stumped us, but then we realized we'd run out of budget for drones.
And it's cold out. Or did anybody notice and this is not a spoiler, but I was just thinking of this. Did anybody else notice in the latest episode of Mandalorian, the slightly breaking of the fourth wall reference to the Office Space movie? Anybody notice that?
I haven't seen that one yet.
All right. I'm almost a spoiler, but it's not a spoiler because it doesn't spoil the plot. But I'm like, that's an Office Space reference, and I know it. I'm going to start doing my timeout on people asking questions or comments. I think.
And you can type it in the chat if you don't want to come off mute, but feel free to interrupt at any point.
And there's also a QA box. What's the difference? They're in different boxes. But you could type in either QA or in the chat. We'll be watching that. All right, I'm going to move on to sort of the star topic of the show, and that is Tracy's conversation, high-level talk, TED Talk about operationalizing containers inside of NeuVector. And I think you're going to like this because it's not going to be a here's where all the shiny buttons are kind of conversation, or here's how fast this drill runs, but really talking about maturing your organization and thinking about how you're going to use security tools inside of your Kubernetes environment. So I'll stop sharing and I'll let Tracy take it away.
Okay.
Now we get to make fun of him not able to use Zoom.
That's right. Exactly. And we are, I mean, these are just the guardrails around no questions or that office chatter. I even wore my StackShare t-shirt for questions, for good luck. But we're going to talk a little bit about operationalizing NeuVector. Of all the questions from new customers, or even as sometimes when we're talking to prospective customers, they'll start to, you can see the light bulb kind of go off when it's like going from checkers to chess, or even three-dimensional chess, because they start to realize, okay, so I can do these operational modes at a container level, but yet I have all these different ways of applying rules and between federated and CRD, and all of a sudden they can kind of see the wheels start turning a little bit. So, and that becomes where you can kind of tell when someone gets it, like, okay, this tool gives me kind of capabilities that I can leverage, right? It's not just a pure feature set, or I don't even know how to describe it. It's, you really do. There is an art to using the tool in your environment. Your environment is unique. Your SDLC is unique. The applications you're running are unique, and everything about it is unique. We don't talk about that enough, because a lot of times we're trying to make parts of it look like other parts, for stability or, best practices, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it's unique, and none other like it. So I'm going to cover very, very quickly just kind of the basics, because if you've never worked with NeuVector before, you may have no idea what I just spent 2 minutes kind of rambling on about. The first is the protection mode. So from the time you install NeuVector and apply the license, we're in what's called discovery mode. We're learning behaviors at that point, network behaviors, process behaviors. Then you can move that operational mode to monitor mode. Monitor mode basically is kind of a test mode, if you will, where we're no longer learning. We're just going to alert you if we see anything that we hadn't seen before, anything that's anomalous, any anomalous behavior, network traffic, any processes running on a container. We're going to be like, hey, what was that? And you will have an opportunity to review that. And then, of course, protect mode is when you don't want to just be alerted. You want it to stop any of that anomalous behavior. This is the goal of where you want to be. This is where you're actually getting that kind of protection. So I'll just cover very quickly that discover mode. This is where we're learning the rules, right? We're learning layer 7 network protocols so that we can validate those protocols. We're learning all the processes. If we're assuming everything that we see is allowed behavior, right? So you want to learn rules in an environment where you are not, where you're very unlikely to be hacked at the present moment, right? So you wouldn't necessarily want to run discover mode in a production environment, because everything we see looks good to us. These are the basis of our rule sets, right? So you actually want to do discovery in a lower level environment, development, test, QA environments, those kind of, maybe staging even, and then take those rules, validate those rules, test those rules, and then move them into a production environment where you will enforce them and feel confident. Yes, everything that's running in there we should have seen before. That monitor mode, kind of in mentally just think of, okay, that flips off the discovery, no more learning. This is also when you're getting these alerts. This is when you are actually able to convert those alerts into rules. So this is kind of the tailoring, right? You go in for that final fitting. You've got your basis of your network and process rules, file access rules, if you've added any of those manually. And now we're going to fine tune anything else that we haven't seen. Maybe if you're running in a QA environment, maybe you've got automated tests and scripts and things like that running that you wouldn't want to see running in production and don't expect to see there. So you may be taking those out or something like that. And then, of course, you want to get into protect mode. Now, you can do this at a granular level, container to container. So really evaluate your risk where, we commonly find environments, production environments that are running in both protect and in monitor mode, just for whatever risk reasons they may have, understanding how they're getting alerts from the monitoring versus protecting, PCI data, or trying to turn on DLP sensors. Those DLP sensors we need to be in protect mode to detect and block social security numbers, credit card numbers from leaving your environment. So Now that we've covered the operational modes, we need to talk about the rules, right? And there are rules, how they're created, and then how they are enforced. So when we are creating the rules, as we just said, discovery mode gives you learned rules, right? That's the only mode that gives you learned rules. That's important. You can create the user-created roles when you're in discovery mode. But why would you? Because discoveries, you got a computer learning rules, thousands upon thousands of rules at a detailed level. So we kind of want to avoid manual entry if possible. So when you go into that monitor mode, that's when you're going to get alerts for anomalous behavior. That's where you're going to convert those into allow rules. Now, CRD rules and federated rules. So there's a difference between these are different ways of taking rules and applying them to different clusters, right? And there's a couple of different ways of doing that. The CRD rules are created from the learned rules and the user created rules, right? So it's the combination of those two that become CRD rules. Federated rules don't really become CRD rules. Federated rules are actually entered, and that for that use case, that's when you're running multiple production environments, different regions, you want them all identical. And so you would use federated rules to kind of manage them from one user interface. And you're going to push rules to multiple environments and you're going to manage them that way, keep them all the same. And so the federated rules requires environments to be able to talk to each other, at least from a controller level within NeuVector, being able to have that communication. The CRD rules or security as code, that doesn't require that kind of connectivity. You can apply CRD rules to any environment. And you can also apply CRD rules and federated rules together. And that's when things start to get a little bit, which should we use the federated rules? Or what about the CRD, So I'll explain a little bit of that. And we'll kind of, we'll try to pull on the right pieces of yarn and try not to destroy the whole sweater. How they're enforced. So the enforcement is top-down, federated rules, then CRD, user-created learned rules, right? Like a firewall does ordered rules. As soon as you hit a rule that matches and says yes or says no, you're done, right? We find the rule that matches. So if you had a matching rule for CRD that said allowed to do something, but there was a user-created rule in the environment that said deny it, or vice versa. User created that said allow this behavior, but the CRD said no. That CRD rule will take effect. We won't even see that user-created rule. And so, like a firewall, and this is only applies to the network rules. The process rules don't have this kind of order, right? Wouldn't make sense that way, but network does. You can think of at the very bottom of this, as Jordan likes to say, there's kind of an invisible deny all at the bottom, right? We're going to look for a rule that matches. When we find it, we're going to execute it, deny or allow. And if we don't find any rule that matches, then no, that's anomalous behavior. We're going to alert you in monitor mode, or we're going to block it in protect mode. So now that we know how kind of these rules are created and we know kind of how they're enforced, let's talk about kind of a typical scenario or a common scenario where you've got multiple environments, right? And every environment's unique. Every SDLC is unique. But when we start kind of looking at generalities of kind of how you would use this, I think this will start to make sense. So again, you install NeuVector and you install it in development, QA, maybe a perf penetration test, but some environments where you're going to begin collecting all of this information. You can start to compare different environments and the learned rules between those environments. You'll run discovery mode for a day or a couple of days. Exercise the application. You could do it in an hour if you know how to properly exercise your application and cause it to generate all the stuff, database calls, etc. But you'll run this for a time period till you feel like, yeah, we're seeing a lot of the things we expected to see. And at that point, you're going to have a group of learned rules. This is your basis for all of the rules that you're going to be working with from now on. Then you're going to switch to monitor mode. And at that point, you're going to start getting alerts. And from those alerts, you're going to start creating user-created rules. Now, would you want to convert rules in every environment to user-created? I don't know. It's a great question. Maybe in your environment, you want to have user-created rules and you want to kind of fine-tune in different environments. User-created rules are great for like that QA Testing, if you had some rules specifically around testing, you could create those in the QA environment. If you had specific rules for, like, say, maintenance mode, we've seen groups create maintenance mode rules that they would apply as a CRD that drops everything to monitor mode so they can do stuff. It's tracked. We detect everything that they're doing. And then when they take the rules off, it goes back to protect mode or something like that. But basically, you want to get one of your environments picked, and usually it's going to be a development, could be QA, because, again, what are we going to do with these rules? We're going to create a CRD. We're going to create security as code rules so that we can check these into version control, so that we have something that says, these are the rules. These are the security rules that fit this application. And then we want to test those rules in QA. You want to apply them there. You can compare them with the learned rules. What rules did we learn that are not in the CRD, or what's in the CRD that wasn't learned? What kind of differences do we start to see there? Is there evidence of drift? NeuVector doesn't necessarily discover drift. We block drift. We actually prevent changes when we're in that protect mode. So that can be a consideration as well. So now we're testing these CRD rules. We're deploying those in our perf environments, our penetration testing environments, and those rules are the same ones that got tested in QA. So continuing on, you want to get into production, right? So you may move those CRD rules and put that staging environment pre-production into monitor mode. And then if that looks good, you can apply them to production mode. Because again, in monitor mode, we're not blocking anything. So there's zero risk you're going to break anything, but you can start to get some of those rules that you can start to see some of that anomalous behavior, the differences between stage, prod, and your QA environment. And then those rules need to cycle back to development so that they can be created, added into the CRD exactly like you would any other kind of code. Ultimately, it's probably going to look a little bit like this. And I notice I haven't talked any about the federated rules. The federated rules are, again, that's kind of a use case where you want to have a set of rules and you could do it with the CRD, but you want to take those rules and you kind of want to manage everything from one connected UI. I'll show you kind of what that looks like. And pray to the, here we go. So this is a federated environment where we have a master cluster here. I've got a couple of other clusters on other cloud environments, Azure and IBM. And I'm this federated policy that comes from this central cluster gets pushed to those other clusters. So we create groups. Those get pushed down. You kind of need these groups to apply some of the rules. The admission control rules, these are, for example, allowing an image to run in the environment if it has 0 CVEs or 1 CVE, blocking high-risk images, things like that. The network rules that we learn, the process rules that we learn. File access rules are manual. We don't learn file access rules automatically because there's just so many. Our approach is we have that default list of protected files, and then you can also obviously add a file or directory that you want protected or that you don't want to be changed. And then response rules. You can also push response rules. So federated gives you like 6 elements to push to these other clusters. And so this is where you're kind of managing those clusters from a single user interface. These clusters should be connected. Maybe it's all production environments. That's usually what we see is all the production can still talk to each other because they're production, right? But different clusters in different regions, that kind of thing. So I'll take a breath. Any questions, especially around particular environments? I was talking just a little bit about the federated rules. So if your environment, are you using the security as code CRDs? Are you using the federated rules? How's that working out? Is that meeting every expectation, or do you need to use a combination of the two? Or if you have any questions about that. The federated rules, I'll give a couple of different ways of kind of looking at this. Just like I was showing, you would have a master, and that master would push rules to these other environments. And so you would have federated rules basically in place on all three environments. These two environments here are getting the rules from the federated master there. If you were doing this in a stage or a pre-prod, you would probably have federated rules just for that environment. So you would probably have multiple clusters where these are the rules that we've said need to be standard across all of those. And so we're going to push those rules down. Yes, you can still use CRD rules. So even if they're connected and federated, yes, you can apply CRD rules and use the flexibility of being able to apply a certain set of rules for whatever function you want to have there.
Tracy, I saw a question come in.
I did too.
Yeah, and I was going to type the answer, but it's actually really, I do this question better justice by actually just reading it out loud, where he asked, do you have a sandbox environment to practice all of these rules? And
yes.
Yes, it depends on
Yes.
depends on how you're asking that question. Yeah, Tracy's example, what he's showing is that you practice all of these rules. You go learn them in a development or a QA environment. So again, there's three steps, right? If you start at the end, protect mode is absolutely protecting your environment, but writing rules is really, really hard. So NeuVector gives you a gift in the form of learning rules, going, hey, dear human being, do these rules look like something you'd like to use? You go, why, yes. Thank you, NeuVector robot, for writing my rules for me. And then the other gift you get is, I don't want to flip the switch right away. And that's what that monitor mode is. So monitor mode, you can think of as really being a dry run, a sandbox of the rules. So in that mode, it's no longer going to learn anything new, but it's not going to slam the gates shut on protect. It's right in the middle. And what it says to you is, it gives you alerts and says, dear human being, here's something that I would have stopped had I been in full protect mode. Do you want to review this? So it is a dry run of those rules. Did we answer the question?
It is. The answer is yes. The answer is of absolute thumbs up. Yes, you definitely want a sandbox. Anything that goes into production should have been tested, validated, et cetera, before.
In fact, that question reminds me, like when Tracy was putting his presentation together, I was arguing that production should never, ever have anything in monitor mode unless there's an emergency. But again,
discover mode.
Or even monitor. I mean, I think everything should be in protect depending upon who you are. But depends on what your environment looks like. Like everything should be in protect. I don't want anything to alert me. It's too bad you weren't protecting this, right? But that depends on what your environment looks like and what you're protecting for. And to that, and the reason those slices are there is, as a user, just to be clear, you don't flip an entire cluster into protect or not protect. I mean, you can, but you can do this by application, by group, by namespace. You can have some things that are absolutely in protect mode, some things that are in discover and learning mode across every environment. It's extremely granular. There it is right there.
Yeah, exactly. Very granular, risk-based. Jordan, are there any other considerations outside of just protecting and blocking versus monitor mode for why you may or may not want to use monitor mode?
Well, one of the things
we did not prepare this. I'm just
one of the things about monitor mode, and I think people sometimes run into problems, is they've got this all or nothing idea that I'm going to run my entire environment in discover mode, yay! And now I'm going to flip my entire environment to monitor mode. Well, every little thing that you either didn't catch, you didn't write a rule for, or that you did write a rule for, NeuVector is going to do exactly what you told it to do: alert you to everything. I'll let that soak in for a second, right? So going my whole cluster all at once may be overwhelming for the human beings at the other end. Take it application by application or group by group. NeuVector does a very good job of intelligently finding where those groups of applications and related pods and containers are inside of your environment. Do it like that. And then what you do is you aren't taking your whole world through this process. You're taking application by application. And again, this is, everything's API driven. This can be very codified. Applying this level of security and operations isn't a burden for your devs. Your devs will go, oh, thank you. This is more programmatic for me now, rather than just showing up in the 11th hour of deployment and security swoops in and goes, here's everything you did wrong. I mean, this is allowing you to sort of know the answers to tomorrow's math quiz today so you can get an A. It does actually bring harmony to especially those DevOps environments. Everybody gets along. I don't know if that's the answer you were setting me up for, but that's the answer you got, Tracy.
No, I like that answer. I was another thing that came to mind was in the monitor mode. I don't actually know that this is a real consideration, but in monitor mode, when we're seeing that traffic go by in protect mode, we're kind of at line speed at that point, right?
Right.
When we're in protect mode, we're actually blocking. We're in line with that. So there's like a small percentage, 3-5% introduced latency on the ping, which at first you're like, oh my gosh. But if it's a cloud environment, if your application environment of typical, you've got low ping speeds or that kind of thing. And so a small percentage of a small percentage is going to be very, very small, not noticeable. But I can't think of any other outside of that. There's, Monitor is going to let you know. Monitor is a good way to find out if you did discover that you had something going on in an environment, you were seeing some unauthorized activity. It could be internal activity. It could be somebody who actually has a password and is doing something that nefarious. You could see that in monitor mode and not block it to see what else they do and to apply other tools to further investigate what's going on here or collect additional data. Our packet capture capability is another forensic tool of actually being able to see.
Being able to capture actual packets inside of the Kubernetes cluster is, I think a lot of people think that's a unicorn, but it works.
Exactly. Any other questions or thoughts or anything in your environment that you're thinking about? Well, how would we do this here? We've got this special condition or corner case, use case that doesn't seem to fit with this. Anything like that?
I'm rooted by
Was this helpful at all?
That question in. Appreciate it.
Was this helpful at all with the operationalization? Or was it just all colored boxes? And the color selections here were not, that was not an engineer who does not, it's just like, I just want big, bright colors. No, these are actually the colors that you see in NeuVector. The CRD rules, the monitor, everything that's in Discover has that color blue. When you see things that are in protect mode, there it is. This one right here, it's that color green, or I'm sorry, protect mode is green, monitor is purple. There you see some purple. So I wasn't just randomly picking stuff here. Under the policy groups, same thing. Just exactly what we're just showing. Federated rules get applied. Now we're showing the groups here. When I actually look at, say, let's look at a environment. Why am I got half of this thing buried? Go to here, or even maybe this one that's got some interesting stuff. So you can see some CRD rules. Yeah. So these are in order. The network rules that we take a look at. There's that federated. This is that. There is no box that says allow all down there. That was me. I just made that up.
Yeah, don't do that.
Well, if it helps
shut up all your security.
The conceptualization.
In the chat, Tracy, Amrita Bandhu asked, hey, you said, send me the details of the environment to practice before deploying my cluster. Amrita, I'll reach out to you after the conference, but I want to make sure that I will try to address that question. The environment where you'd practice this would be so let's say you've got a production cluster of Kubernetes. The place you practice this would be a dev test environment. And if you don't have one, you could do all of this in one cluster. Like, it's not against the rules. And what Tracy's showing here is an example of actually a fairly large environment. But if you're a small company and you've got one cluster that's doing everything, you could run this entire process in your production environment. Get get NeuVector installed in that environment. NeuVector is really easy to install. It's Kubernetes-native, so there's no agents, there's no weird stuff to deploy on hosts, there's no box or we're not hairpinning. You get it in there, and immediately the first thing NeuVector does is everything is in discover mode, and then you can go, application namespace, however you want, learn those rules, flip it to monitor to make sure you like what you did, and then fully put it in protect. So a kind of a two-part answer. You could either, if you don't have it, build a duplicate cluster that is your test QA dev, which is probably recommended, or you could do it inside of your production cluster without causing any harm. When NeuVector is installed, it's just learning and it's leaving your applications alone. You're not going to damage anything unless you flipped it to protect and forgot to allow some part of your application through that was necessary. But if you did that, I'm sure someone would call you right away. But we'll reach out to you, make sure we understand, what that question is. So again, I hope that helped.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a very shy audience. No one's taken their mic off of mute, but that's okay. But you're allowed to take your mic off mute if you want to ask Tracy, me, or anybody any questions, or type it in the chat.
Hi, I have a question. Really, it's not related to this. I just have a general question about the company itself.
Mm-hmm.
How big is the company? How big is the team, basically, that develops this?
So we've got people all over the planet. So a worldwide company. We're actually a fairly small organization overall, based in California. We're dev first, so we probably got more engineers than anybody else in the company. I don't know I wish I could tell you what the count of engineers was, but we've been doing some hiring and adding some engineers.
But there's what, 45 people total? I don't remember. I don't know what our total organizational count. So yeah, fairly small.
Feels right.
Okay. No, it's. I mean, I think your tool is very impressive, and in terms of in the industry, who are your competitors, or is there anybody who provides this kind of?
That's a really good question. In fact, such a good question. People are going to think I paid you to ask it. You're going to get and Tracy will probably give a similar answer. And this is so the first part, the part where NeuVector does actual network inspection up through layer 7, that's patented. Nobody does it except us. There's nobody quite doing security at that level the way we are. There are some companies who do view us as competitors, especially because we also, and as you've seen, part of our platform does include vulnerability management. NeuVector is really good at that too. Our customers tell us we have the fastest scanning engine on the planet, but there's lots of vulnerability management tools out there in the world. So I'm trying not to sort of thump our chest and say we're the mostest awesomest, but for the core of what NeuVector does, there's nobody actually doing that. We're not using eBPF. We're not trusting the underlying architecture of Kubernetes to say, hey, it's set up this way and it's on this port, so it's probably secure. Our founders noticed a problem inside of these container environments and set out to solve it, and it's really hard. So if I were going to answer that, I would say that we have companies like Aqua, Twistlock, Prisma, etc. There's a long list of security vendors that definitely consider us to be competition. They're primarily scanning based, scanning oriented. Scanning is important. We scan as well. But like Jordan's saying, when it comes to the runtime network inspection, we don't really have any competition for that. We have companies that kind of make claims that they're showing network visibility, but they're using syscall filtering. It's already hit the kernel. So there's, we've been talking about this, it seems forever, about, security vendors and how they kind of pontificate on all these things that they do, and they kind of stretch the truth, or they, look at things from a certain point of view, as Obi-Wan used to say. So,
we try to be pretty real about this is exactly what this product does. This is exactly how it does it. And we haven't found another company that's doing it that way. Like Jordan said, there's patents that back that up. Our founders are experts with firewalls and networking. And when you take something like Kubernetes that abstracts away the complexities of all that networking, and yet you're able to not only do some of the things you used to be able to do, we've had a couple of people say, oh, you're bringing back the firewall. I don't know about that. I mean, it's yes and no. Like when people hear we're bringing back the firewall, that usually does not conjure good feelings of yay, right? You're slowing us down. There was a port that caused the go live to go, completely crash or production crash because we forgot about this one port that this service needed, right? No, we're bringing the ability to do that kind of security, but we're able to do it in a way that's fully automated, that's kind of machine driven, that matches the behavior of your application and automates all of that. And so when we start talking about it in those terms, yeah, there isn't anybody competing with us there.
So do you actually have some kind of artificial intelligence embedded in the system, or this is more of a static rule base within the code? This is I really didn't want to ask this question.
No. Fantastic questions. Fantastic questions. The rules are learned at the network layer. They're learned at the process level. We do not use, as Jordan said, we don't use eBPF for the networking portion of that because, again, doing syscall filtering on the networking, if you're very familiar with syscalls, there's not a lot of them related to the networking portion. Send and receive is, I think, the two. But we do use some eBPF for the process, for identifying the processes and things like that if it's available. If it is not available, we actually have other methods of identifying those. So not so much artificial intelligence or machine learning. That's one of those words that people just love to say, oh, we do machine learning because it's a machine and it learned it. Real machine learning takes thousands of tries before it gets it right the first time. Not exactly the security model I think that you want to try. We finally blocked them. This is the 1,000th try. So yes, there's there is that intelligence of understanding how to see the packets, identify the protocol, port, all the different pieces there. So certainly there's a lot of computation behind that.
No, that answers my question. I have one last question, actually. You talked about your competitors. So do you think in an organizational setting, if somebody wants to implement NeuVector and they already have, other products which are sort of complementary, not to the extent what you do, would NeuVector and other products, could they coexist?
Yeah, we actually have some customers that are doing that. So it wouldn't, if you did that, you wouldn't be the first person to actually do it in production.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. We even, I think it's for, if I go to, it's weird. I can't click on, are you able to see my screen, Jordan?
We could see your browser.
I know, but I can't click on anything on it for some reason. That's really strange. How about, oh, there we go. It was a Zoom problem. If you annotate in Zoom, you can't do anything else.
No,
you will look like a fool live in front of lots of people. I was going to go to the assets registries and point out that if I were going to add a registry here for, I think it's JFrog Artifactory. Notice using JFrog X-ray. So in the case of JFrog Artifactory, if you want to use your JFrog scanning results, we'll let you do that. You can flip that on, point it there, and we'll use that in relation to like the admission control rules. We do have a lot of customers that use the scanning portion side by side with their other scanners because they like having right? After you've had a few false positives, you're kind of like, I need another voice of reason. I need to see who's matching up and doing those kind of comparisons. We love those kind of comparisons because we definitely, we're very, very focused on fast and accurate scanning and eliminating as many false positives as possible. So it's good sometimes to have that comparison. That's usually a very positive thing. And if you're talking about something like, say, Istio, or if you're using a service mesh, we are 100% compatible with that. In fact, I think when I got past all of
Tracy,
these,
I think I know where you're going. And while you're going there, let me add a little parcel to your journey. I'm Root Bandhu. I hope I'm saying your name right, sir. It's like, how are you doing 0-day protection, and why do? And the overarching question, which is a good question, why bother doing this inside of the cluster when I've got next gen firewalls outside of the cluster? So it's a multi-part question about, wait a minute, how are you doing 0-day protection? How does microsegmentation work inside of the cluster with us? And then why bother? Like, what do we get out of this? And I think that's a good question. We get those kinds of questions all the time.
Yeah. So we're cloud agnostic, CNI agnostic for the most part. You can use lots of different CNIs with NeuVector, Rancher, OpenShift, any flavor of NeuVector, Docker Swarm. We've got Docker components. Obviously, you don't get some of the features if it's not in a Kubernetes orchestrated environment, but we work with Istio, Linkerd, Containerd, so yeah. So flexibility and an ability to work alongside with a lot of other tools. I think that's good for all the tools. They should be working together because good layered security, you're probably going to have some overlap between tools, and that overlap should be to your benefit as well.
Yeah, let's go.
We're 10 minutes from the hour.
Yeah, let's go.
Time flies.
Let's go talk about go to the vulnerability screen while I've got you driving the controls, and let's go talk about security risks, vulnerabilities. Why don't you full screen that, because you're dropping off all the pretty colors. Let's see if it works. See, it works for you. It's just not fair. So as you'll see here, we're able to go filter down. Obviously, there's a lot of noise. These are all the vulnerabilities inside environment. But if Tracy's able to, so from a dev standpoint, we could filter down and show just the things that have a fix, that are high vulnerabilities. Once that's in there, like, here's all the stuff you need to take care of. And that's a very expected thing from a vulnerability management tool. But now, Tracy, go up to that advanced filter and go show, then you can go in and go, let's go look at everything that's a high CVE without a fix.
Without a fix.
Right. So you're sitting.
You mean I can't do anything about these?
Yeah. So these are identified CVEs that don't really have a remedy, yet here they are in your environment. And this is, in fact, this is our demo environment. We can see that not only do these exist, we have images and containers that are currently in use inside of this environment. So what do you do? How do you turn to your auditors or your management and go, why, yes, we have this problem, but we're still using it. And everybody's got this. That's where the leading edge of NeuVector actually comes into play, because you're establishing those rules. You're using a permit list and a tried and true methodology that says, this is how my application is going to behave. These are the protocols it's going to use, the endpoints that are in play. And once you've written those rules and said what is permitted, and you're in protect mode with, of course, an implicit deny any at the bottom, it would really be impossible for any of these CVEs to be exploited. And along with that comes things like 0-day exploits, where, man, nobody's ever heard of it until 5 minutes ago. If it's not part of the normal behavior of the application, that gets stopped inside of your Kubernetes environment. And again, why is that important inside of your environment? I mean, first of all, if you're running a lot of your production or most of your production, Kubernetes is a data center in a data center. Like, that's your environment. The same reason you had a next generation firewall stuck between your physical servers or your VMs now, or even a few years ago, is the same reason you want to do it here. And the other reason is even if you think you have these protections at the perimeter of the cluster, an attacker in an open environment like that could easily exploit something, do a container escape, fire up another container that does something nefarious that you wouldn't know about. In fact, an example of that is that Kubernetes exploit that was announced just last week. That was, and I'm understanding the exploit right, what happens is it allowed an attacker to spin up a container inside of your environment and answer for a DNS resolved entry that was external to the cluster. But if that IP address showed up inside of the cluster as being valid, your requests would hit that internal IP address directly. And then that container was set up by the attacker to be a man in the middle. So it was intercepting your traffic. And as the operator of this Kubernetes environment, you wouldn't know. Certainly not outside the environment, because once the traffic egressed, it looked like normal traffic because the man in the middle was happening inside of your cluster. But secondarily, even as the Kubernetes administrator, you might not have known because that looked like normal traffic. And if you were using this tool and had it in protect mode, or even if you were in monitor mode looking for it, you'd say, that's anomalous. Why is that traffic going this way? Don't let it happen. I know it was a long answer, but
well, it would look exactly like what we're showing
like
there,
that.
right?
Yeah.
You would see a container and you would see that traffic. Because of where we sit, they can't hide the traffic. They can't even tunnel that traffic because we're validating the protocols. So we will see the container, we will see the traffic. And then you can say, well, what is that traffic? And what is that container? And who is that beautiful wife in the beautiful car?
How did I get here?
I was going down a hole.
How did I get here?
How did I get here? That must mean we're nearing the end. We're on the final stretch of our first office hours.
Right. I've got some closing remarks with pictures.
Go for it. I'll stop sharing.
You should stop sharing. Let's see if I can share my screen and make it work. Doo-doo. There's where we're handing off to Tracy. So this is our little goodbye slide. I want to make sure that we've talked about, okay, go. So final last word, so you got an alert about this. We're going to be doing a fireside chat along with Sonatype. This should be very cool, talking about, again, security, especially in a DevSecOps environment. So the details are coming soon. I'm actually going to drop a link in the chat. This is completely, we have no dignity and no pride about this. We're going to, let's send this to everybody. What I want you to do is we're just telling you, just ballot stuff for us. Will you go to the URL in the chat and vote for NeuVector in the Cloud Native Dirty Dozen? Please and thank you. We got a new series we've dropped out. It's called the NeuVector Minute. It is what it sounds like, where we're doing little tiny bits and bytes. They're on our website. They're on our YouTube channel, where we just go through a small point, a configuration, how to implement NeuVector. I did one where we're trying to just get NeuVector up and running in a matter of a couple of minutes inside of a Rancher environment. And we obviously take requests for those. So please look out for that. And if you need anything from us at all, comments, complaints, feedback, questions, the front door at NeuVector is info@neuvector.com. And I want to wrap this one up with a congratulations.
Couple more questions I wanted to get to. I feel like we missed. I hope, Joel, that we got to the CRD rules. If we didn't explain the CRD rules to your satisfaction, we do have a video on security as code. Check out the NeuVector Minute Security as Code video. That is all about the CRD rules, how they're built, how you can apply them. It's like 3 minutes long because we had a rule. So it's stuffed. It's stuffed with information.
It's stuffed with, and if it's not enough, we have an hour-long version of that as well.
Yeah, if that wasn't enough. Yeah. If that wasn't enough. How is this different from a WAF? Deploying URL inspections inside Kubernetes. Why do that inside of the Kubernetes? Yes, and I think Jordan, you did touch on that just a little bit. We did touch on that, yeah. Exactly. Once you get inside of Kubernetes, you still want to be able to see that traffic. And just because something said it was DNS or said it was the protocol that it said it was, once you get inside of that cluster, all of a sudden you're in the side of a new data center and you have access to things that you may not have had before.
Well, and the WAF question is such a good one. It's common, and it's so common. We actually have at least one, if not two, blog posts and white papers on the, where does a WAF fit in, and what's different about what NeuVector is doing and how they work together, right? NeuVector, we don't say throw out your WAFs, right? But we don't really say to anybody, throw out your anything. We're like, please bring security back in is our message.
Exactly. Let's see. And I think on the patent numbers and the patents, if the link, Jordan did put the link in there, you can Google NeuVector patents. I think Google has its own special area where they do, show you all the patents. So if you look up NeuVector under that, you should be able to find, I think, about 6.
And more coming.
Yep. Excellent. Oh yeah. And congratulations to Stephanie, our trailblazing CEO. It's awesome. Really well deserved.
And there's some other questions in the chat. Amrit Bandhu, I know you're having audio problems, and I promised we would reach out to you one-on-one because you've got some great questions. I'm going to try to email you that information. And if you want to set up a one-on-one or we can geek out, we're happy to do that. That's what we're here for. So I think that's a wrap right at the top of the hour, like some sort of professionals or something. Okay, folks, we're going to try to keep doing this as a regular series, at least monthly. If it starts getting really popular, we can probably jam up the frequency because these are the kind of conversations we want to have. Open, geeky, getting into the weeds. And if you've got requests for topics to cover on these, by all means, warn us or pop up in the next one and play some Stump the Chump. I think
thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.